and from Norway, northern Norway, and also from all over Europe, really. So we're delighted. My name is Maeve Shoigan, and I work in tourism development in Údarás na Gaeltacht. That's an organisation that focuses on enterprise and community development in the Gaelic-speaking regions of Ireland. We want to preserve the language. It's one of the oldest living languages in the world. And to do that, we create employment and provide support because, of course, this language isn't only in the remotest parts of the country anymore, which tend to be coastal communities, like a lot of the people around the table here today. Co-hosting today, you've met Craig already, and he'll be talking to you a little bit later. He's in another coastal community. He's in Newfoundland and Labrador, and we're delighted to have them with us today as well. So I suppose a quick history on the forum. It began many years ago with a Newfoundlander who moved to Donegal, to Buncrana. He wanted, I suppose, continuous collaboration and keep his relationships strong between Newfoundland and Ireland and Donegal, because he saw many similarities between both areas. And because of that, we're now in our 13th year of the conference. It's extended to a few days. We're covering far more subjects than they did originally. And I think also Don probably just likes the idea of meeting lots of people from home and traveling over and back. And it's been a great success, and we're delighted. Today and this year, the conference is addressing sustainability. And over the 3 days, we have a number of themes. Today, it's all about tourism. And tomorrow and Thursday, it'll be about the blue economy, energy, and that whole area. And if you haven't registered for that yet, please do on laurenticforum.com, and you can do that. So I guess the tourism industry, we know, is a mainstay for many remote regions across the world, but particularly in the Atlantic areas. It's very important. It tends to be seasonal. So how can we address that? And obviously, more than anything else, the issue with COP and all that's happening in the news these days, sustainability has to be on the agenda as well. So we felt this was something that was important to look at and to explore. So this year's theme is all about sustaining coastal communities. I'm going to hand you over to Craig now for a few minutes. He'll give you some housekeeping and general information on today's session, and then I'll come back and introduce some of our guest speakers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maeve. Very well done. Welcome everyone. I get to do the very technical part. I just want to make everybody aware that we are recording the session today. So that started partway through. You probably heard that begin. We're looking at about 2.5 hours for the session, and we're going to schedule a 10-minute break there. So we just wanted people to know that that would be happening. We encourage participants to chat in the chat window. I'm sure we're all very used to the Zoom platform now, so that's a great way to collaborate. But we're also going to be doing a question and answer piece after each presenter. So we would ask that you put your questions and answers in the Q&A box at the bottom. For those of you who like social media, please feel free to tweet, post, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're into, your love for the Laurentic Forum, and we'd love to see that happen. So that's probably enough from me, Maeve, to get things going. I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Craig. I'm delighted opening the sessions today. We have two guests who will say a few words. And firstly, we're delighted to welcome Minister Steve Crocker. He's works with the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation in Newfoundland and Labrador, and has a remit for tourism. A little bit of background to him, I suppose. He was elected to the House of Assembly in 2014. And since the swearing in, Mr. Crocker has served as opposition critic for innovation, business and rural development, including R&D. He's worked as an entrepreneur in his family's business in the district of Carbonair. I've been there, I think, on my last visit. On the 8th of April 2021, he was sworn in as Minister for Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation. And we're delighted to have him with us today. Thank you very much. You're very welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Good morning,
Loud
Maeve.
and clear, loud and clear.
Oh,
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Good morning to you both, and good morning to everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I am Steve Crocker, the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation for the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to bring greetings to the Laurentic Forum, albeit virtually, and I hope as somebody who is responsible for tourism in Newfoundland and Labrador that this will be the last virtual forum. It is time for us to move past virtual meetings and get back to the opportunities to meet in person. The opportunity to share with you this morning and our partners across the North Atlantic is always special. We have much in common in terms of history, culture, and heritage, Our ancestors had a common resilience to harsh weather, terrain, and worked hard to overcome those obstacles. Of course, many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have Irish, Norwegian, and Icelandic ancestry. This, along with our shared culture, has fostered strong ties and a connection that remains strong today. These similarities connect our people and our places. This is why this year's theme of sustaining coastal communities, sustainable tourism, and the value of the blue economy in the North Atlantic are so relevant to us all. Historically, our peoples relied on the ocean as their way of life, and that continues today. The ocean, for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, Irish, Norwegian, and Icelandic people, is part of our identity. Our government recognizes the importance of both sustainable tourism and the blue economy. A blue economy is made by creating jobs in coastal communities, and in Newfoundland and Labrador, many of our jobs in the tourism industry are in our coastal communities. Being surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean brings many tourism opportunities, from fishing expeditions to whale watching, boat tours to kayak excursions. People are drawn to our province by the vastness of the ocean. Many of the top experiences for our outdoor visitors take place are ocean-based. 52% of our vacation visitors go whale watching, and even a greater number of 55% go seabird watching. Our popular ocean-based tourism activities include hiking coastal trails, iceberg viewing, sightsee boat touring, ocean fishing, kayaking, exploring lighthouses, and taking in the local specialties in seafood and other local fairs. As you can appreciate, tourism is a pillar of our province's economy, supporting over 2,700 businesses and 20,000 jobs here in Newfoundland and Labrador. We recognize how important it is to foster an environment where our culture and our tourism sectors flourish. COVID-19 has had a profound and lasting impact on our tourism and hospitality industry. Our province is addressing these issues strategically by declaring 2022 a come home year for Newfoundland and Labrador. For those of you this morning joining us from across the ocean, come home year for us, the term we use for come home year is commonly used by municipalities to encourage families and friends to travel to their hometown for a reunion of sorts, to celebrate and to come together. Come Home 2022 is similar, but at a much bigger scale. We're calling on all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, family and friends, to come visit their province. And we're also calling on newcomers to come and see this place that we call home. I look forward to welcoming lots of people back to Newfoundland and Labrador in 2022. One of the aims of this initiative is to lift the spirits and give our people a reason to celebrate. We want to rejuvenate our tourism and hospitality industries, the one that's been most substantially impacted by COVID-19. Another familiar component of this initiative is to revitalize the arts and culture sector, as well as enhance our cultural tourism offerings by providing a rich and varied selection of things to do and see in Newfoundland and Labrador in 2022. Our award-winning tourism team will design a dynamic campaign to promote our province to not only our friends and relatives, but the world. We hope that we will see numbers in excess of what we have seen in excess of what they were prior to COVID-19. In closing, I wish you a very successful forum and look forward to your deliberations over the next few days. And I'll certainly follow up with Craig after the forum to get a summary of what we heard and what we've learned. And again, thank you for the opportunity this morning.
Thank you so much, Minister Crocker, and delighted to have you with us. And I think part of this whole initiative and forum is long-standing relationships that we can develop over time. And having visited Newfoundland and Labrador myself, I'm keen to bring my own family back there. And, you know, apart from all the discussions and the topics we discuss, I think the 4 regions attending today, you know, even if we all just visit and spend time there as tourists, I think that's a great achievement as well, to discover new destinations that you wouldn't traditionally go to. So thank you very much for that, and look forward to meeting you on my next trip. I'm now delighted to introduce the Mayor of Donegal, Councillor Jack Murray, and over to you, Councillor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a good morning to those of you joining us in Newfoundland. As Cathaoirleach of Donegal County Council, it gives me great pleasure to officially extend a welcome to Laurentic Forum 2021, the 13th annual hosting of an event developed by the Ulster Canada Initiative and its partners on both sides of the Atlantic. I offer a special welcome to those of you connecting with us from the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador and our new friends in Iceland and North Norway. While we may now be living in difficult times, online communications have allowed us to ensure that we are still able to reach out to our partners in and around the Atlantic coastline, and now more than ever, it is critical that we maintain our links and strive to develop and renew partnerships. By having our 2021 event online, we also allow people to participate in the safety of their own homes and learn more about the various aspects of Donegal, Newfoundland, Iceland, and North Norway's partnership and some of the key areas we are mutually exploring into the future. Laurentic Forum 2021 will be split into a number of sessions across 3 days. Today's event will be augmented with further events on November the 3rd and 4th. The overarching themes of the Laurentic Forum will be on sustaining coastal communities with a specific focus on the value of the blue economy and sustainable tourism. These are areas of huge strategic importance for Donegal County Council, and developing a transnational approach to learning and cooperation is more important now than ever as we seek to tackle the repercussions of both COVID-19 and Brexit. However, despite these events and the challenges we encounter, partnerships such as these allow for mutual learning, looking at the common purpose and challenges that are facing coastal communities such as ours, and engaging the northwest of Ireland and the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Iceland, and the people of North Norway. We believe in the huge benefits of shared best practices on the sustainable development of coastal communities in the peripheral North Atlantic area. Today's session will focus on the tourism sector, especially those challenges and opportunities faced by the tourism industry, by seeking to share knowledge from both sides of the Atlantic in an effort to support, enable, and inspire tourism in the Atlantic area. We therefore look forward to hearing of the opportunities available and how we might strive to work together to avail of these opportunities, collaborating more effectively in the future. Finally, I also wish to acknowledge the contributions of Minister Steve Crocker in the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation in Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd like to extend an invite to Minister Crocker to come and visit our country in the future and explore our shared history and experiences. In closing, we hope that you find this year's events both engaging and informative, and we look forward to welcoming you all to the beautiful county of Donegal in future years as we strive to continue to develop this great partnership. Gur Maigov, Amor.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for that. Thank you so much. So to get things started, our first speaker is from Norway, and before we even introduce her, we will show a short video, and I'll hand over to you, Krista. Thank you. We're ready to go.
I am green today. I chirp with joy like a cricket song. I am gray today, gloomy and damp like a morning fog. I am orange today, loud and messy like finger paint on the wall. I am yellow today. I shine my light out like the sun. I am white today, soft and quiet like new snow. I am blue today, calm as glass and cool like the sea. I'm a rainbow today, all the colors of the world. I'm a rainbow today, all the colors of the world. I'm a rainbow today, all the colors of the world are in me. All the colors of the world.
Newfoundland and Labrador.
It's calling me like the rainbow. It's calling me like the rainbow. The rainbow. One day soon. One day soon. One day soon.
Thank you so much. Beautiful images from Norway, Newfoundland and Labrador. So let's all pack the bags and book the tickets. So to our first speaker today, I'm delighted to welcome Sigrid Engen from Norway. She works for NINA, which is the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research. She's a researcher there. She will talk, she's going to outline a number of projects that she's worked on and research projects that she's been involved with. Sure, I'll leave it over to you. You're very welcome, Sigrid, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. Oh, unmute. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maeve. I just had some unmuting issues. But thank you very much for that amazing introduction. Beautiful pictures. So my name is Sigrid and I am a researcher in Northern Norway. My background is in ecology and environmental social sciences. And I am going to talk, I was given the opportunity to talk at this conference, focusing a little bit more on environmental sustainability, but I would also talk about sustainable tourism in general, and then give you a little bit of a background on some of the research that we are doing up here in the Northern Norway. I just want to also thank Maeve and the organizers for inviting me to this conference. I'm really looking forward to hearing all the great presentations after this, after myself here. And I am wanting to also very interested in getting to know other people working on this topic. So, okay, next slide. So I am, right, so you've already, the previous slide I was supposed to, I'm working with the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research. As I said, it is a institution for applied ecology, but we also have a lot of social scientists working at NINA, and we do interdisciplinary and also transdisciplinary research here. Okay, next slide. And so you've already said that I'm seeing the beautiful pictures from Tromsø. You all should come visit. That would be awesome. And so Tromsø is in the northern part of Norway, as you can see on the map here. Next. And I am from the Lofoten Islands, which is a group of islands a bit further south, which is also a place that has experienced a lot of increase in tourism in later years. Okay, next slide. And next. So just for tourism in Norway, experiencing nature is really a key motivation when you come to Norway, both for foreign tourists and domestic tourists. Next. And you can see from this figure here that what tourists want to do in Norway is largely experiencing nature, experiencing the fjords, experiencing the mountains. This is really high up on the list of priorities. Next. But then, as most of you know, the high number of visitors may compromise environmental sustainability. And this picture is from Lofotodden National Park, a place where we have, where we do research. I will talk a little bit about that later. And you can see the effect of the high number of visitors to this area from the picture. Next. This is just a number of passings in this area on a trail counter during the last 3 years. And you can see the peak in the summer season and then the drop in last year during COVID. But overall, we have a high number of visitors to this protected area. Okay, next. And the reason why people come here is the beautiful scenery, the beautiful views. Next. And also the opportunity to take cool Instagram pictures. It's a really cool and popular Instagram spot for people to come. Okay, next. So you've probably seen this definition about what sustainable tourism is. So the World Tourism Organization defines it as tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impact. Next. But then what does that mean in practice for individual companies, individual tourists, and decision makers? Okay. Next. So there have been different conceptualizations regarding sustainable tourism. One approach focuses on acceptable limits and defining an objective and scientifically based carrying capacity. For example, figuring out the number of tourists that a destination can support. Then there is the dynamic view of limits to growth, which is based on the industry and its capacity to adapt and to manage tourism, focusing also largely on the technical solutions to enable continued growth. And then finally, there's the community-based tradition, where stakeholders and communities determine what is acceptable, which emphasizes local control and empowerment, and often results in the smaller is better thoughts then. Yeah. Okay, next. So that was a little bit about the general thoughts around sustainable tourism, and then you have indicator frameworks to make things a bit more operational and to guide decision making and business development. For example, you have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, you have the EU taxonomy, and you also have the Global Sustainable Tourism Council's sustainability criteria. Okay, next. For the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they're quite general and they focus on creating jobs and promoting local culture and products and developing tools to monitor impacts from tourism. But then they say, so they're quite broad and you have to do some localization of the SDGs, as they called, in order to make them relevant for the local level. So next. But then, and then also they say those specific targets don't really say a lot about what environmental sustainability involves in terms of tourism, but then the SDGs have to be seen as interlinked. And this figure here from Stockholm Resilience Center shows how the environment is quite foundational for both societal and economic sustainability. Okay, next. And next. So the EU taxonomy, it was published or presented in last year in 2020, and it's a classification system made by the European Union in terms of defining environmental sustainable economic activity. And it's a way of defining, getting to a common framework about what economically sustainable or environmentally sustainable economic activity means, to avoid greenwashing and to also approach the green shift. So the EU defines environmentally sustainable economic activity as one that contributes to at least 6 of the environmental goals that you see on the figure and does not do significant damage to other goals. Okay, next. And then you have the Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria, which are global standards for sustainability in tourism and travel. And you have industry-specific criteria, and then you have destination criteria. And next. And so for Norway, what has become really popular in later years is this sustainable destinations. So they have, Innovation Norway has taken and developed this scheme, this certification scheme, where destinations in Norway can get certified as sustainable if they prove that they actively work towards sustainability, both in terms of environmental, economic, and social sustainability. Next. And next. Right, so just to the research that we are doing up here in the north, I'm involved in 3 different projects focusing on tourism. One is a waste management project focusing on a very local scale. It's limited to 1 national park in Lofotodden, where we look at waste management in this protected area. And then you have the coastal barometer, where we focus on developing sustainability indicators for coastal communities in the whole region. So it's a regional scale project. And then we have Arctic Hubs, which is an European Union funded project where we are looking at across country. Right. And next. Traceless Tourism, our waste management project, is a really, really fun project. We started applying for funding last year, and we had our first pilot project this year. So our goal is to develop ways of handling waste left by visitors to this protected area. And the background is the increase in visitation and the problems of human waste and litter from this development. So yeah, so we started the pilot project this summer, and we're hoping to get funding for 3 to 4 more years. That's the plan. Next. So this is Kvalvika Beach. It is it's a place that people like to visit and camp, and it's quite a remote area, so people have to walk for an hour and a half to come here. It's quite rugged terrain, so it's not so easily accessible. And once you come here, there's no infrastructure. So if you want to use the toilet, you have to go in the wild, and which also creates problems when there are a lot of people. So this is what we're faced with. Next. And this is just another picture of camping in this protected area. It's really beautiful here on a hot summer day. Next. But then what we see is that this camping, the high number of visitors creates these waste hotspots. And this is just a map showing our mapping efforts from the summer. And you can see how the waste accumulates in the areas where people camp behind, in the boulder areas where you're kind of hidden. So yeah. Okay, next. Yeah, so we are looking primarily at the sustainability challenge related to human waste, because this negatively impacts visitor experience, it negatively impacts the environment, it negatively impacts drinking water quality. So our goal is to reduce human waste from visitors, and we try to do that by developing a waste management strategy to change visitor behavior. And we're using social psychological theory for strategic messaging, which has shown to be quite effective in other protected areas in North America and elsewhere. So we're collaborating with the park management, and it's my institution, the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research, and then we have a few international partners also. Next. This is just a little bit, we had a lot of media attention this summer. I don't know, it's a topic that it's catchy, so that's really, really a lot of fun. Next. Then there's the second project. It's the Coastal Barometer. It is a collaboration between very many different institutions in Norway. We have, and we also have 2 international partners. I won't name all of the partners, but yeah. Okay, next. And our goal with this project is to develop these sustainability indicators for different topics. We have tourism. We also have biological diversity, food production, sense of place, local fisheries, carbon storage, economy and livelihoods, and clean waters. And we want to develop sustainability indicators for all of the coastal communities in Northern Norway, and there are 81 communities in total. Next. And this project is inspired by the Ocean Health Index, which is a framework for measuring ocean health on a global scale, developed by our colleagues in California. Okay, next. In the start of this Coastal Barometer project, we had some local involvement. So we traveled along the coast and held workshops with local people and asked them what sustainable tourism is. And what they mentioned was quality experiences for tourists, little or no environmental impact, positive local attitudes, good planning and management, good information, and the use of local resources and expertise. And it was really great to talk to people, because people are knowledgeable and really interested in this and engaged in this project. So we got a lot of good input. Okay, next. And we're now in the process of developing this sustainability indicator. We have explored the use of different types of social media data. We're also looking into the use of emissions at the municipal level, and we have this local population survey where we target the whole population in Northern Norway and ask them about attitudes towards tourism and perception of threats from tourism. Okay, next. And then finally, it's the EU project. It is a 5-year project. We have 22 partners in 11 countries. Our focus area is the European Arctic, and the rationale behind the project is that sustainability challenges may defy local solutions because of the complexity of globalization processes and the interconnectedness between different actors and industries. So we want to account for this complexity when we try to develop solutions to sustainability challenges. So I just want to do some advertising for our webinar. It's on November 30th, and everyone is welcome to join. We can maybe circulate the link somehow. That would be really great. Okay, next. So this is my last slide. It is just to show some preliminary results from the Arctic hubs. We have mapped environmental impacts across our Arctic hubs. And what was common in terms of impacts from tourism was the carbon footprint and disturbance of Arctic wildlife, trampling of vegetation, impacts from litter and waste, and the consequences of infrastructure development. So yeah, with that, I think you can do the next slide. I just want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sigrid. That was fantastic. We have a number of questions in. I'm going to put one of the questions to you now. Just a question from one of our panelists. Is there any indicators that try to evaluate how the communities and their residents, excuse me, hold on, am I starting correctly? Sorry, I'm on the wrong question. Is it easy for individual tourism businesses in Norway to adhere to the Innovation Norway Sustainable Destination Standard?
It's if it's easy for the business to, I think it's it's a matter of the way that it's a way that the destination companies and the businesses sort of go together and report to Innovation Norway. So it's not necessarily the business itself. It's like it's on a higher level. I think it feels, so it's not like the business has to be sustainable, and it's not also that the destinations have to be sustainable per se. They have to say that they are working towards sustainability. So there are different criteria, so that the municipality have to have one of those, like a plan for sustainable tourism, those things, and the companies have to collaborate in terms of waste management. So there are a lot of different criteria, and the municipality or the destination companies have to kind of collaborate so it's sort of like determining it's sort of a process more than a state. So I wouldn't say but it's a lot of work, and it requires they have to report every 3rd year, I think, in order to maintain. If you have your certification, you have to work and to maintain the label sustainable development, sustainable destination. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And are there ways to evaluate, or do you use indicators to evaluate how the communities feel and the residents about tourism activity in the region? Have you ways of assessing that?
So that's the local population survey. We're hoping to get, we're doing this participatory mapping survey. It's a different type of survey where people map their local areas. We also have a questionnaire in the survey, and we're sending it out to the whole region, and it's a huge undertaking. We have 17,000 invitations out in this region, so it's 5% of the population invited to participate, and we're also asking about their attitudes towards tourism. Yeah, we also explored using TripAdvisor and data from TripAdvisor to look at how people rate different tourist attractions, different tourist companies, but actually they were quite overwhelmingly positive. So there was some little variation in the data. So it doesn't really say a lot. We think maybe all the people who are positive actually respond to or just do these ratings in TripAdvisor, and people maybe who weren't that content just leave out. So there's a bias in the data, so it's difficult to use, but definitely, but it's a huge undertaking doing these population surveys. So it's not easily accessible information to measure, to assess local attitudes on a really large scale. Yeah.
Maeve, just to check the question and answer box where people were asking people to put their questions. There's actually three. The first one, Pat Curran asked about getting a comment from the minister. Unfortunately, the minister had another scheduled event and had to go, but Pat, I'm sure we can get the message through and I can probably reach out directly with you. Anna wants to know, will the fishing industry be addressed in the waste management project? The plastics found on the beach in oceans are 40% due to fishing gear. So perhaps just as important as individual human waste. Sigrid, any thought on that?
Right. Yeah, we actually, because in Norway there is a huge study and a lot of efforts in terms of marine waste. There's a lot of projects like on small scale and larger scales, and researchers dedicated only to dealing with marine waste, and they work with fishers they clean beaches and assess where the waste comes from, and they try to develop infrastructure to get fishers to hand in their waste instead of so there's really a lot of activity going on. So we have decided to actually leave out the marine waste component and only focus on the human waste and the effects of visitors in this protected area, because that's actually where the focus is not on. So that's our priority.
And Tanya wants to know, for the Traceless Tourism Project, what criteria made this area selected stand out for the pilot project? Was it the most impacted or the least?
It's well, it was actually the park manager there who contacted my institution, and we have Dr. Rose Keller, who recently was employed at my institution, who has experience from Denali National Park dealing with this kind of issue. So we kind of had the necessary expertise to collaborate with the park manager at Lofotodden. And so that's actually how that project came about. But now Rose has a really extensive network, and we're expanding, and we're hearing about other protected areas in Norway who have and elsewhere who have the same problem. So this seems to be, and Rose has worked with this problem in Alaska. So this seems to be a problem that's quite widespread. In the Arctic Hubs project, I saw that some reports wrote about the human waste issues on Svalbard, close to Longyearbyen. So this is really, and in Lofoten also, because I'm from Lofoten, I've also seen just alongside roads and on rest stops. It's not really pleasant because of it wasn't always like that, but it's not really pleasant to stop at a rest stop and because of all the waste. So it's not just protected areas. It's a lot of it's other places also. But we're trying to expand the project to another protected area in the southern part of Norway. So we want to, but we are also relying on funding to it also limits how big we can do the work. But we have large ambitions.
Thanks, Sigrid. Thank you very much. There's some more questions, but we'll follow up later with them as we want to move on. Because we have an unexpected guest, which is wonderful. Another person has joined us on Zoom today from Norway. We're delighted to welcome Trond Arne. Trond, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So delighted to have you. You're very welcome today, and delighted to hear from you. And I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thanks. My name is Trond Arne Kongsli. I'm a business developer and project manager in a tourism company here in Tromsø, northern Norway, called Best Arctic. And we are doing a lot of sort of various kind of activities in our Arctic nature. And we are also developing biking products regarding to that. So I will tell you a little bit about that. But I'm very glad that Sigrid was talking ahead of me, because she pinpoints some of the great things about our area, but also some of the challenging things. That is the fact that everybody can use our nature for free, and that's something very nice. But it's also a huge challenge how to take care of the most popular areas. And when it comes to sustainability, it's not only it doesn't only affect the environment. It's also about the economy and the social part of it. So I will tell you a little bit about what we tried to do. And we have during Corona, and the Corona sort of shut us down literally when it entered in March. So everything was closed down in a snap. But you should never waste a good crisis. So we have had a lot of room to think, and a lot of room to try to find out what will the post-Corona situation be like. And what we see now is that the travelers coming back, they are looking for a slightly different products than what they used before. And here up in North Norway, and especially in Tromsø, the main season for us is the winter season. But we are also starting to develop products like hiking and also biking. And just before the Corona, we established a company called Arctic Cycling. Arctic Cycling, which were about to develop cycling products, biking products in our area, and especially the first phase focus on roads, and in the second phase focus on what we could do to out in the terrain. But it's also like this. We have this. Our nature is very vulnerable, as Sigrid pointed out. It's vulnerable for use both of people hiking and also especially for biking. So that's what we have to take care of. And also when we try to develop products, the use of our nature is for free, and the same for our roads. And the major problem or what should I say, obstacle or difficulty is how could you earn money for something that's for free? And that's a big challenge. And when we do things, we would like to do things so that you can grow the local societies which we tend to visit or which we tend to use when making new products. And it's important to use local restaurants, local hotels, local campings, and also guiding. And it's very much in that to get our guests to pay attention to local businesses along the route. So we have been working a lot with that, and we have sort of during Corona we have developed a project which is sort of overall for all we do, which is called a modern sustainable travel industry. And that's for us where we always, whatever we do, we take it into account that it should at least be able to satisfy 7 out of UN's goals for a sustainable business. And it comes to everything from year-round work to how do we get our guests to pay for services locally, not just to use, and that kind of thing. And we had some products going on which we tried to market for the 2020 season and the 2021 season, but that was mainly for the Norwegians. And the Norwegians, we are so proud of ourselves. We don't need a guide. We will find out ourselves. We will rent a bike, or we will bring our own bike, and we will do the routes. And we will not buy for guiding, and we will not buy for all the other efforts. So it has been not very successful. So we have, I think, especially for the Norwegian market or the national market or maybe the Scandinavian market, we have to think differently in how to present and produce our products in the future. But for sure, we do think that also for biking, it is a great potential. It is a great potential in our area, and it's also a great potential, for instance, for winter. We're using fat bikes in fixed trails which could be made, and that kind of thing. So we are working towards it. But in all what we do, we think of how could we get our guests to lay down some money in the area, not just for bike rentals or equipment rentals, but also for services like guiding and all that kind of thing. So
Thanks, Trond. Have you, we don't have information to share right now, but we can send out your information later. Or if you're happy to share your details in the chat box, we would love that as well, to see some of the work that you're doing and to learn more about your region. Would that be possible?
Yes, I can write down my email address and then
Thank you.
those who are interested could just email me and we will send you some information about what we are doing.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you coming at such short notice. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess, interestingly, our next speaker is Dale Jarvis, who's based in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I guess we all know about sustainability in terms of the environment and energy and even financial sustainability. But cultural sustainability is something that's of interest to us as well, because how do we preserve our culture? How do we ensure it stays in a world where everything is so generic now and everything is very all the same, I guess? How do we preserve what we had historically? And Dale is going to speak to us today from Newfoundland about what he's doing to preserve culture, both tangible and intangible, in Newfoundland and Labrador. And you're very welcome. We're delighted to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a great delight to be here. So my name is Dale Jarvis. I'm the executive director of the Heritage Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador, Heritage NL for short. Heritage NL was established in 1984 to promote an understanding and an appreciation for our built heritage, our physical buildings. So we're the organization that designates buildings as registered heritage structures, and we provide grants for buildings as well. Move on to the next slide. So we are also, since 2008, the agency in the province that is tasked with safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. Many of you will be familiar with the 2003 UNESCO Convention on Intangible Cultural Heritage. Canada is not a signatory to that. We keep pushing, but we have a strategy here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and Heritage NL is the organization that works with communities to safeguard traditional knowledge. So we're interested in both kinds of our cultural heritage, our built heritage and our intangible cultural heritage, our craft skills and our knowledge about the land and the sea around us. Next slide. So that encompasses a whole wide range of different aspects of our culture. UNESCO kind of breaks things down into 5 categories or 5 domains. So things like performing arts and traditional crafts, our knowledge of the universe, our social activities and customs. We're engaged in a little bit of all of it, I guess you could say. Next page, please. I'm going to talk very briefly about 3 projects that are currently underway, specifically around traditional knowledge, traditional skills, and craft. And where possible, trying to link those back to the idea of cultural tourism. We have an ICH strategy that has 4 main pillars. And the 4th pillar is around what we call cultural economy. So we want people to be able to live in the communities where they grew up and to maintain their traditional skills and be able to do what it is they have always done, but maybe sometimes playing with tradition a little bit and finding ways to interact with the tourists that do make up an important part of our seasonal economy in Newfoundland and Labrador. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is kind of a pilot case that we did, which was a traditional knowledge inventory along the Baccalieu Trail, which is a tourism region on the Avalon part of the island of Newfoundland. And the idea was that we would go out into the community and recognize that not everyone who has traditional skills or who is good at a traditional craft is necessarily in the front lines of the tourism industry. Quite often, people come to Newfoundland and they know about our traditions, they know about our storytelling and our singing and our cultural events, but sometimes it's hard for a tourist to interact with some of those tradition bearers because they're not working in the front lines guidelines of the tourism industry. So the idea was to identify people within a region that had what we could call traditional skills or traditional knowledge, and then partner those tradition bearers with tourism operators, so that if, for example, a bed and breakfast owner had someone who was interested in a particular traditional craft or skill, boat building, for example, they would be able to access the inventory, find the person in their region who had those skills, and then broker some kind of interaction between tourists and tradition bearers. Next page, please. So we had a number of public meetings in the region and a number of online sessions. This happened just as COVID was starting, so that kind of created some issues. Once we got the program up and running after our first couple of public meetings, everything got shut down and we had to move to a virtual platform. But we had some really great conversations with local people, both elders and tradition bearers, and with business development people in the community. Next picture. This is just one of our posters that we put up for one of our events, and we had an online survey that people could enter their information into. Next, please. So we launched the inventory last year, and it has a little bit of information there about the region that we were working on, and then how to use the industry. So some ideas for business people who might want to partner with tradition bearers. And the idea is that this is meant to be a money-making opportunity for everyone. There is no expectation here that tradition bearers will provide their skills or knowledge for free. The idea is that they will develop some kind of experience or training opportunity or workshop or demonstration that a tourism operator can then exact a fee from, and some of that fee then goes back to the skill holder. Next picture. So it's broken down by community, and then within community, there are individuals who have agreed to make their contact information freely available to the public. So it is one thing to have an inventory of people, but not everyone is willing to have that information made accessible to the general public. So we recognize that there are other tradition bearers, but these are some examples from Harbor Grace South, for example, Mr. Ed Spurl, who, if you want to learn about splitting fish or woodworking or how to smoke capelin, you can meet up with him. If you're in Heart's Content and want to explore seal skin work, crafts related to seal skin, we can hook you up with Lori Pitcher. Next image, please. Some of our participants, the majority of our participants are older. Clifford George, a well-known artist and storyteller in the region. But then I wanted to show this one because not all of our skills holders are, old people. They're not all retired seniors. So this is Shanna Brown, who's a young girl in Whiteaway who is a rug hooker and accordion player, really interested in kind of maintaining those older traditions. And we're always delighted when there's young people who want to take on some of this work. Next slide. So that's the first piece of the three projects that I'm going to talk about, that idea of creating a skills inventory. That was a pilot project, as I said, and we worked on that at a regional level during COVID, which meant some difficulties in communication. I think it's an example of a type of project that could really be beneficial at the community level, really work well at the town, municipal, county level, where people really do know who the people are out there who are interested and available to demonstrate or teach some of their skills. One of the things we recognize here in the province is that, again, we have lots of people that have skills, not necessarily any entrepreneurial skills. So we wanted to create another kind of series around traditional skills, around intangible cultural heritage, and presenting a series of case studies with people who have used traditional skills in some way to develop a business or tourism product. So we created a series of these on the various topics that you can see here: folklore and craft, the economusée kind of idea where you will have craft producers producing in a setting that is both museum and gallery, and being able to talk about the history of their craft with tourists as they come. Next slide, please. One of our partners, I mentioned boat building. We did a case study with the Boat Building Museum on how they are using traditional knowledge as revenue generation. They are a museum of boat building, and one of the things that they are very interested in is maintaining traditional skills, passing along boat building skills. And they've developed a whole series of workshops for beginners and more advanced boat builders to teach them the skills of boat building. Next slide. I think actually Cindy from the Labrador Artisans Cooperative is here. I think I saw her name over in the chat. Hi, Cindy. One of the other projects that we were looking at was a very old tradition, a tradition that has both Indigenous and European roots in the province, and that is the idea of barking. So that is the use of traditional bark mixture to preserve things like fishing nets, but then also to color and maintain fabrics. So we're really interested in the work that the Labrador Artisans Cooperative is doing, and again, taking these old traditions and experimenting with them and then repackaging them in a new way. Next image. We provided this case study around social enterprise. This is the Green Family Forge in Trinity, very well known and a long living tourism attraction in the region. It is a historic building that has revitalized the craft of traditional blacksmithing. They have two blacksmiths that work in the forge, and we're working with them on a number of projects. But this particular case study is around the work that they do, not only to maintain tradition, but also using tradition to build a craft industry that they can then support the building and the historical component of the site as well. Next image. This is one that's kind of in the region in which I live, who also featured in our traditional skills inventory, Barb Parsons-Suley, who is a guide, a local guide, just talking about how she incorporates history and storytelling and local knowledge into her guided hiking. We mentioned earlier, the minister mentioned how many people are coming here and want to see our coastal scenery, and we feel there's a lot of opportunities to not only interpret our natural heritage, but also our cultural heritage as well. Next image. We never know where this information goes. This was one of the first case studies we did on Christine Legros, a local knitter, and she's pulled together a business around traditional knitting patterns. So we had prepared this case study and we released this out into the wild, so to speak, and we never know where it's going to end up. In this particular instance, next slide, it ended up in Kyrgyzstan. One of my colleagues doing work with UNESCO was working on a heritage business toolkit for Kyrgyzstan, saw the work that we were doing around traditional patterns, fabric patterns, textile patterns in Newfoundland, and asked if they could use their case study. Next slide. It was incorporated into this UNESCO toolkit for craftspeople in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia, and giving them some tips about how to use tradition, but then also develop it for sustainable business. Next slide. And part of what we included in our case study, which got picked up by UNESCO, was just about small business planning. Again, teaching some of those entrepreneurial skills to people who may not have those. Next image. And I think this is just the last one. Next image, please. And finally, very, very new is our Craft at Risk list, which just was released last week. Over the last 2 years, we've been working with the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador to develop a Craft at Risk list. This is based on the UK Heritage Crafts Endangered Crafts list. Next slide. It features 55 crafts, and we have ranked them in a way that is similar to the language used in ecological conservation around those skills which are extinct in the province, those which are critically endangered, and currently viable. Next image. So there we have the bark tanning again, and you can see down in the lower right, some Riglin fence. This is a type of local fence type. So we're interested not just in fine craft, but also in vernacular skills and building skills. So some of these things that are critically endangered in the province, you can see there. Next slide. Here's one of these Riglin fences that I was talking about. Next slide. So we recognize that having a list is great. Here's a list of terrible things that are happening, or a list of things at possible risk. And we realize that we need to do something about it as well. So with funding through our provincial government, we've started a mentor apprentice program. So this is a grant for pairs of people, an established skills holder in one of our critically endangered or endangered skills, and then an apprentice who wishes to learn those skills based on the Living Treasures program out of Japan. And people can apply and learn various things. And so the next deadline is December 10th. Next slide, please. So I think this is just one of our last images. So one of the things that we're looking at, hopefully getting a mentor apprentice program around, is traditional weaving. We've had a couple of people interested in traditional weaving approach us already. So the idea will be to partner up someone who has a very knowledgeable skill base with someone who is just starting out, who has a bit of knowledge and wants to learn more. And the idea is just to maintain those skills and keep them as part of a healthy living, vibrant community. And I think that's it. Other things like windows and whatnot are also included in that list. And I think the last image there is tin kettles.
Dale, thank you so much. That's fascinating stuff. And from an Irish point of view, for sure, all the stuff that you mentioned there resonates so much with us, and the same kind of challenges. And I think there's potential for partnerships and for maybe cultural exchanges, not only between probably Ireland and Newfoundland, but I'm sure the other regions here today would have similar, especially the boat building is a huge one here. How do you keep the crafts alive? And I have one question here, and I'm not sure to have the answer to this, but anyway, we can follow up. So to match a crafts person, if you can still find them, with an apprentice, is it challenging to get the crafts people or the people who have that skill to kind of engage in it? Because maybe they're a bit older, maybe they're not interested, maybe they don't. Have you had any examples of trying to bring somebody on board to share their craft, and how has that worked?
Well, as I said, the program got launched last week, so we're still very much in the early days. But yes, what we're finding, and we expected that this would happen in the first kind of go around of the granting program, that we recognize there is a disconnect. One of the reasons why skills aren't being passed along is because the people who want to learn don't necessarily know who the elders in that community are. So we've already had numerous people reach out to us and say, you know, I have a skill and I would like to teach it, or I am a new learner and I would like to learn this skill. So part of what I suspect I will be doing is acting as a bit of a matchmaker and linking people together who have complementary desires.
Fantastic. I think definitely we'll be reaching out to you, and there's a bit of interest there. We'll connect people to you, and we're delighted to have had you with us to share that. It's fantastic work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So to move on, thank you very much. So our next speaker before our break, it's awful to have the shot before the break, but anyway, we're delighted to welcome Johan Vidar Iversen. He's with the Icelandic Tourist Board in Reykjavik, and he's talking about seasonality, I suppose, and the impact of that on tourism and how it can be, I suppose, how it can be addressed. And we're delighted to have him with us today. You're very welcome, Johan.
So you can hear me, right? Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to take part and speak and share our experience with you, our neighbors on both sides of the Atlantic. It's actually quite thrilling to learn about this kind of association the Laurentic Forum. It was new to me, and we are looking very much forward to, going into cooperation and exchanging ideas. But yes, we've had quite a ride in Iceland in the past decade or so, or even longer. When I was growing up, and that was only kind of a couple of years ago, I grew up with the story that the Icelandic tourism was so cyclical, so seasonal. And basically it was, we got these funny looking people on the streets a little bit in June, and then we had some more in July and August. And when I say funny looking, I mean those who were obviously tourists because they were all wearing hiking boots and outdoor jackets and so on in the middle of the street. But that was it. We only had tourism in the summer, and you nearly never saw actually a foreigner in the winter months. So we all grew up with the idea that Icelandic tourism was very, very seasonal, or basically just during the summer. But that has been changing quite rapidly. Next slide, please. And it hasn't happened, without a reason. People actually got very conscious about the situation, and we knew that it was a big barrier for tourism becoming sustainable in this country. As the number of tourists grew, which happened gradually over the years, we understood that we had to invest in all kinds of things to be able to receive all these tourists, and i.e. to invest. And then I'm not only talking about the traditional idea of investment. I'm talking about in people, in human capital, or in the environment, in all kinds of things that are necessary and able to grow a sustainable and successful tourism industry. So we can actually say that it was a decision made on a general level. Both the industry itself and the government of Iceland basically decided to do this systematically. That is to try and increase the period, to make it a longer period that tourists came to Iceland to visit us. And basically, in the first instance, the main emphasis was on making us more broad-shouldered, so to speak. We basically, here we talk about the summer season, the winter season, and then we talk about the shoulder months. And the shoulder months are the late spring months and then the early autumn months, where we are trying to get more tourism to come to the country. So when we talk about this in Icelandic, we talk about trying to become more broad-shouldered, so to speak. And this has given us some success, can we say? And just to give you an example, we've studied a short while ago. We did a little study on how we have been doing with regard to seasonality, and there is a lot of different measures for seasonality. I mean, the word itself is based in the 4 seasons of the year. I mean, hence the word seasonality. But it's actually used in a much more general way today, and we can talk of seasonality of days within a week, or seasonality of months within a year, and so on. And then again, in tourism, you can have various criteria like departures or arrivals of tourists to the country. You can have expenses, tourism expenses in different months or different periods and so on. or you can have stays or nights in accommodation, tourist accommodation. We here actually locally, you could say, we use a lot departure numbers from our only real international airport, which is in Keflavik, close to Reykjavik. So when we are thinking about tourism ourselves, we mostly use the departure numbers from that particular airport. But in most other countries, there are many more gateways to and from the country. So if you want to have international comparison, we decided it's best to compare hotel nights or hotel stays. The reason being that at least I found that the data available all over, that is, mostly available, is basically the number of stays in hotels, rather high-class hotels or accommodation that is defined as hotels rather than beds and breakfast and so on. It's a kind of a rather high-end accommodation. So we did our little study on that. And again, there are many measures on it, on when you want to measure seasonality. But we decided for what's called a seasonality ratio, which is basically the number of hotel stays or hotel nights during the busiest period of the year, in our case, in relation to the average number of stays over the year. So if you think about it, the higher the number is, that means that the busiest months is bigger and bigger relative to the average for the period. So a higher number gives you a higher seasonality, and a lower number gives you a lower seasonality or a more even tourism. And you can have this, between the number or ratio of 1, which is basically when you have the same number of hotel nights for each month of the year. And then you have a seasonality ratio of 1, and then you can go all the way up to 12 if every single tourist, so to speak, is coming to your country and staying in a hotel in only 1 month. Next slide, please. And the reason why I'm talking about seasonality as a kind of a basic feature in these slides is that we realize, or we believe, that seasonality has this effect, as I said earlier, on all kinds of different facets on sustainability of the industry. It's really a big influencing factor on sustainability in tourism. Here are some, and usually when you see the literature on seasonality, in kind of the academia part of this thing, most of the articles are about negative effects of seasonality. And here are a few main effects. First, we can talk about the monetary or financial effect. And that is basically the money side, the profit or loss side. If you have high seasonality, you basically need to invest a lot of money in facilities like hotels and infrastructure and so on to care for the high season, to be able to receive a high number of tourists in the high season. And this investment basically sits idle or underutilized during the low season. So in a way, you're over-investing in relation to what you bring in over the year, so you get a low return on investment. Secondly, this seasonality leads to difficulties with what we can say in fancy terms, human capital, or basically the staff, the people who are working in the industry. And it's a widespread problem to basically to get good staff, qualified staff, the right people on board in tourism, if you cannot secure them stable employment. And for most people, it's important to have employment over the whole year and not only a part of it. And it's also a common theme in studies on you could say this social side of sustainability, that poor staffing leads to poor quality and poor kind of say, you can say poor experience for the tourists who visit the country. And thirdly, we have the ecological side. Obviously, when you have high season, there is often risk of overloading, especially nature. I know from experience that our cousins in the north of Norway, they rely a lot on nature tourism. I mean, people come to see this beautiful nature in North Norway. And it's the same with Iceland. It's, you know, once in a while people come to do something else, but mostly the tourists that come to Iceland are they want to see beautiful nature, and they basically or mostly want to experience wild nature, not with too many other tourists, you know, not too many other people. They want to be kind of alone in unspoiled nature. So if you have a very high season, and you're packed together with a lot of other people, like, well, in Iceland we say like herring in a barrel, which means that there's a lot of other people around. It kind of spoils this kind of tourism, doesn't it? So and the places get trodden down, like we saw in Sigrid's slides. You know, it all gets tramped down. And then we have the strain on the social fabric, so to speak. We are only about 350,000 souls who live here. And as I will show you later on, in 2019, we received 2.3 million tourists in 1 year. And when you feel that you cannot get out of the door without, you know, bumping into tourists, and you cannot get to your local swimming pool because the hot pots are all full of tourists, and you cannot get a seat at the restaurant, you know, because of the bloody tourists, and you know that it strains the social fabric. We have experienced that. And then again, you know, societies who are like that in the high season and then basically partly dead, or ghost towns or ghost restaurants during the low season, it's really a negative effect on the social fabric. And then you have also, of course, all these things that have to do with a functioning society. You know, it's a lot of, it has been a high burden sometimes for our healthcare system. When we've had the high season in July and August, and we know that our roads are not built for all this traffic and so on. Next slide, please. So basically, if we take 2010 as a starting point, this is the comparison. Of course, for many people outside the Nordic countries, they are more or less a group. So I show you how our seasonality ratio was compared to our cousins in the other Nordics in 2010. The difference is actually more when you compare it to kind of mainland Europe or old Europe. We had nearly 60% more seasonality in 2010 than the EU 28 countries put together. And we were also, more than a third higher than the other Nordics. And the number had actually come down quite a lot from earlier years. I can assure you that we were much closer to 4 or 5 in the years before. So we had come down quite a bit, but we were still the seasonal tourist country in all this comparison in 2010. Next slide, please. So we, kind of as a nation, or let's say all parties in Iceland, relevant parties, joined hands and worked on this. The main thing for us as an island nation was to both extend and diversify the flight route network that we have. In theory, people could come here by boat, and they do so to some extent with a boat that comes from the Faroe Islands and Denmark to the East Coast. But that's basically, it doesn't really affect the big picture. Generally said, tourists that come to Iceland, they come by flight. I mean, that is how it is. So the first thing to do was to extend.
Sorry, Johan, I'm going to step in. We're running out of time. So I'm not sure how much you've left, but we'll give you a few more minutes, but not to put you under pressure, Johan, but 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah, sure. I'll just keep it short.
Thank you. Thank you.
So these things are all issues that everybody is basically working on, I guess. But for us, the main thing was to extend and diversify the flight network. And here, I guess it was kind of good to be a small country. We had only one major national carrier, the Icelandair. And Icelandair was very instrumental in collaboration with the government, you might say, or public entities, in increasing the scope of the flight network, and extend it longer into the winter months, and increase the number of flights that you had in that period. But let's go to the next slide. We don't need to dwell on this. All of these are quite kind of classical things that people try to do who are trying to get a more even tourism into the country. Festivals, pricing, of course, and offers and so on. So the next slide, please. So it has turned out like that. As you can see here, the seasonality ratio has gone down from about 2.7 in 2010 down to 1.5 by 44%. And it did so in only 7 years. So we've had a lot of decrease. We have a much more even tourism today than we had only 10 years ago. Next slide. And if you compare that, how things have developed in the other Nordic countries, you can see that Iceland is the only country that has had marked differences in or lowering of seasonality in the period. And if you go to next slide, you can see that it's the same with the mainland European countries. Basically, all other countries are flat, which means that the seasonality hasn't changed in the past decade, but Iceland is dropping very fast. Next slide, please. And on this last slide of the show, you can see in the bottom right corner the change that we've had in the number of tourists who visit Iceland each year. And we have gone from less than 500,000 visitors in 2010 to the top year of 2018, where we got 2.3 million visitors. And I can tell you that it was quite packed during that year. We didn't actually have enough room in our international airport. There was a lot of trouble basically in just getting into the country and out of it again. But lowering our seasonality so much has been a key thing in actually being able to receive so many tourists in each year. It has made it possible for us to build all the infrastructure that we need to receive 2 million people. It has been fundamental in preserving the nature that basically we are selling. If all these 2 million people had come during the summer months mostly or only, we would have seen a lot of tramping and we would have seen much better condition of the places. And Icelanders have been receiving tourism actually quite well in general. We have been monitoring that for a few years now. And mostly in 2018 and 19, we started seeing quite negative comments and quite negative feelings from some of the respondents. But in general, people have supported this, and the seasonality lowering was key to that. And then again, we have seen what we call a growing economic value added over those 10 years, which means that the sum of profits and the salaries in the tourism industries in Iceland have been rising from year to year as a proportion of the economy. So that was it for me.
Thank you so much, Johan. Fantastic. Lots of food for thought there, and a lot of stuff that I know here in Ireland we would definitely resonate with. Now, your colleague Elias Gislason is going to join you for the Q&A, but because time is tight, I'm just going to take one question now, and if we have time at the end, we can do some more questions. And this question is definitely here from an Irish person, because we're obsessed with weather, and it's in terms of seasonality. I think Irish people are always apologising for the weather and the rain, but I don't suppose Iceland is the Costa del Sol either, and that it's all around sunshine. What do you do? Seasonality, obviously, to go off season on holidays will mean maybe to accept, bad weather or cold weather or wet weather or snow or whatever. How do you guys address that, or what's your experience of visitors coming off season in terms of dealing with the weather?
Yes, do you want to answer that?
Can you make something good out of it? Celebrate the weather and say, or does it matter? And maybe people come to Iceland don't care. They don't expect sunshine, or they don't expect heat. No. Obviously,
actually, a lot of people are expecting and want to have rough weather. A nice side to it is also that we have a lot of, or we've had in the past few years, a lot of tourists who come to see the night sky, the northern lights. I don't think you get them in Ireland, do you?
Maybe Donegal. Yes, I have a Donegal man in the room with me here. Yeah, way up the top where we are now at the moment. Yes, you do see them, but very, very. It wouldn't be so commonplace. Not like you would have.
No, but a growing number of people come here who want to go ski doing and glacier hiking and looking at the northern lights, and sitting in warm jacuzzis out in the wilderness and so on. So no, it's not always about sun and beach.
Johan may have. There's Elias. Go ahead, Elias.
Thank you, Johan, for your presentation. What we did, to be completely honest with you, is that a couple of years ago we stopped.
The sound is bad, Elias.
The sound is bad.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, it's a little bit.
Then just Johan take this.
How is this one? Is this one better?
Oh, this is great. Yeah,
this is good. Okay. What I was just going to say is that probably about 5 years ago, we stopped selling Iceland over the summer months. We only sold Iceland officially over the winter month or the off-season months, and we did that also in a truthful way. meaning that we were not just putting out pictures of sunshine and things like that. We just put out pictures and stories of real Icelandic weather and things like that. So we were actually just selling the season as they were. We were not putting out fancy pictures, not completely. So I think that is one of the things. And also we started to market greatly to the markets that were willing to travel during the off-season months. That is mostly the UK market and also the US market. And so those markets have become our major, two of our major markets for the past years or so, couple of years. So that was the way that we went, and we have been quite successful at it, as Johan showed you in the statistics.
That's brilliant, actually, and something I think people would like to dig in a little bit more to, and we'll follow up with that. Thank you so much, Elias. Okay, so we're reaching the halfway mark, time for a little break. Because of all the time differences, I'm trying to estimate, I think it's probably almost 15 minutes past the hour in Newfoundland, and it's almost 35 minutes past the hour in all the other regions. So let's say, come back here, please, in about 12 minutes, say a quarter to the hour for those in Norway, Iceland and Ireland, and that would be a quarter past the hour in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we'll take a 10-minute break. Look forward to seeing you all back in 10 minutes. Grab a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and we'll back then to hear from two speakers from Ireland as it happens, and we will see you then. So in about 12 minutes time. Thank you.
You know?
Hey, Krista, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Now that I have a new cup of tea.
A new cup of tea goes a long way, doesn't it? We're getting very ready to start here now. Maeve, did you get a nice break?
I didn't. Unfortunately, I had to do a quick job, a quick spin around, and I'm back. So.
Oh, very good. Okay, just.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks very much. Just to bring everybody in now and get everybody back on, we need a moment for that to happen. And then we can jump right in.
And sorry for cutting the session short with the Q&A, but we're open to questions afterwards and after the event even. So please stay in touch afterwards.
Well, you know, Maeve, I think that is the great opportunity out of this. I'd much sooner that we have a whole bunch of questions and more work to do than to not. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to see other ways that we can bring people together and explore some of these a little deeper. And of course, look for other opportunities. But we can brainstorm on that maybe a little bit later. Morris, are you in the house, sir?
I'm in the house, but you have stopped my video, so you can't see me. Now now I'm in.
We have absolute power, Morris.
I know. Okay, you have me.
We have you. That's great. It's great that you're here. So everyone, thanks. I hope everyone had a little break. We do need to get moving because we do value people's time, and we have made a commitment on how long we're going to be here today. But it is my pleasure to introduce Morris Bergen, who's the Managing Director of Green Hospitality. It looks at resource efficiencies that lead to reduced cost across energy, water, and waste within the business. I think he's going to outline some ways in which the tourism sector can benefit from that reduction financially. Morris, take it away, sir.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon to everybody from sunny Cork in the deep south of Ireland. Let's see. So if I say click or next.
Yeah.
So just brief introduction for myself. I am a hotelier by trade, 20 years as a tourism hospitality manager, and the last then 20 years as a poacher turned gamekeeper, environmental consultant to the tourism and hospitality sector. And one of the things I say with my clients in terms of environmental sustainability is I did all the bad things when I was running hotels, and now I'm trying to correct the damage. I'm done. But I equally understand the challenges facing predominantly in tourism, a micro and small business sector. And it really is that real challenge. So I run an environmental certification program and resource efficiency consulting, focusing on energy, wastewater, and in energy, the carbon element of it. I take a very strong economic approach. So it's the environmental and the financial environmental element I'm really going to sort of focus on today. Next. But I suppose I first say is I'm interested in that. I'm the first person today who's going to mention that horrible word, COP26, following the G20 summit of last week, and our challenge facing us to minimize global warming increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade, which I personally believe we're going to fail by 2100. I believe we're going to hit at least 2.5, and maybe in my lifetime we're going to hit a horrific figures. And that's an economic challenge, because what it means is that the environment that we operate in is going to change. And businesses need to identify that, and the tourism sector needs to identify that. I was quite taken by Johan's comment about the growth in tourism into Iceland and the reliance Iceland has on air travel, which is the similar reliance Ireland has for our inbound tourism air travel, and what is going to happen to air travel over the next 5, 10, 20 years in terms of the increased cost through taxes. And they're coming. We're going to be, our behavior is going to be changed by our governments, by taxes and rules and regulations. And that is going to have an impact on the flows of tourists and also the willingness of tourists to travel. Next, please. We have there's huge resistance amongst us, particularly developed economies, of carbon taxes. And we see it as a real threat and challenge. Yet behind us, of course, looms that ever-present danger. And the greatest threat I see to tourism is unfortunately, the effects of climate change. Coastal and river basin communities in particular, and this conference, this forum, represents predominantly coastal communities, tourism communities. And we are going to see in our lifetimes, not so much flooding as in increases in sea levels. It is the surges, it's the storms, it's the damage that's going to impact on us as businesses and as destinations for visitors. So they're real challenges that I believe we need to face. We need to be talking about it and addressing it. And I'm not being negative. I'm being very much, I believe, I'm being real. Face the real actuality of what is going to happen to us. Next, please. I mean, the interesting one there's the EU strategy on adaptation to climate change. The day of mitigation, unfortunately, has really past us. It is adaptation that we're looking at. And economically, we can fix it. You know, we are talking about 2% of GDP could solve worldwide GDP could solve our climate challenge. And look at the economic impacts climate change is going to have on us. So there's a very strong national governmental discussion and reality. There's been a lot of talk, action required to be taken to assist us. But for a business, we've got to look and address what is going to happen to our business sectors. So I look at the profit side, the business disruption due to weather changes, the financial costs due to climate action costs, price rises, shortages of issues. And I really do think the reduced international visitors with fuel tax come to play a serious part. And that's a real challenge to those countries reliant on that travel. Next, please. Other challenges, and these are pollution, food waste, and these are linking in with demands from customers, and particularly the Gen Z and the Generation Y are the next market for our tourism products. They want to see changes. They want to see us actively engaging in sustainable, environmentally sustainable tourism. Next, please. And the things, the items that they're looking at is they want to see local procurement, and that builds in with the sustainable communities. Buy locally, incredibly buy locally. Stop buying products or importing products through air freight. Reduce pollution, the single-use plastics that are destroying our marine environment. And we're here talking from a marine environment element. The minimization of food waste, that in the developed world, the amount of food we waste is absolutely staggering. And overall, that carbon footprint reduction. So there's key actions businesses must take to demonstrate to our customers that we're improving. Next, please. And the key principles we're going to look at on the financial resilience with sustainability is we've got to do more with less. Those terms, the resource efficiency, focusing on particularly on energy, water, and waste. And they're cost centers. They cost us as business people. There's a cost, and there's an increasing cost. So if you use less, you save money, and you make your business more financially sustainable. Next, please. And if we look at some of the challenges or some of the opportunity, I see it as an opportunity. In 2019, and these are Environmental Protection Agency Ireland statistics, not mine, is in Irish hotels, restaurants, and bars threw away food worth 288 million euro in 2019 alone. Because we just waste food. We are bad managers. And this is a curse in the developed world. We are wasteful with the scarce resources we have. Next, please. Water, we're surrounded by water, but there are still opportunities. And I also look at, when I see water waste, I see hot water and I see energy embedded within the water. Be smart with how we use water. Do we need baths? We used to have in Ireland a mandatory requirement that hotels had baths in ensuite bathrooms. Fortunately, we've changed that rule. And these are it's important things in regulation, not to tie our hands in how we go about being more efficient in how we operate. Is there any justification for having a bath when you can have a shower? And it saves water, it saves energy, it is environmentally sustainable. We still use drinking water in Ireland, and in most of the developed world, we use drinking water to flush sewage down the drain. And I watched on British television this morning the pictures from Madagascar, where they have no water, and we use drinking water to manage sewerage. Sometimes our approach, you really have to question what we do, and it costs money. Drinking water costs money, so use less, use more rainwater, be smart with what you do. Next, please. The big one is energy. Energy means carbon minimization, and not waiting, doing it now. Simple things, and I do say simple things because they're within our grasp. LED lighting, it's a no-brainer. If you're not 100% running your lighting with LED lights, really, you're not an economic manager. Renewables, installation renewables, even in northern climates, very northern climates, solar PV, the new technology, it works. But in biomass, accepted biomass using renewable wood is, and proper installations, and using the technologies that are there. The problem facing businesses with a lot of these new technologies, though, is the paybacks and the cost of them are quite high. And that's where we need our governments, and we need to be working with our governments that they use the carbon taxes they are levying on us to assist us in buying these new technologies to allow us to switch to fundamentally a new electric-driven economy. But it's not happening fast enough, and we're not shouting. And in tourism, I don't see the leadership and the fights coming from our sector to persuade and get our governments to engage more. Next, please. Key approaches, these are implementing an environmental management system, and this is down to the micro and the small and the medium enterprise basis. It's the same principles for a sustainable destination. You measure, you monitor, you implement a program, you create benchmarks, KPIs, you share what you're doing, and you go after, you invest, and you change how you do your operate and manage your business. Next, please. Our future, I say, says, which is more important? I'm gonna click. Our environment, our planet, or profit. And I am fundamentally come from a commercial background. So you might say, I would be saying profit. And I'm saying, well, I don't believe you have to sacrifice profit for environment or planet. And as a father, I will also say, what would our children choose? And I think I know exactly what they will and what they are choosing. Next, please. They're saying we have to change. We are the generation that have created the problem we have, but we have the solutions in our hands from a business, and it makes complete and utter business sense. I've worked with hundreds of businesses in the last 20 years on energy waste and water and resource efficiency, and every single one of them have saved money. Every single one have saved more money than they had to invest if they had to invest anything. So I encourage all of you to look at those tie in those three principles: vigorous management of your energy, your water, your waste, but also the be prepared for business disruption due to the changes that are happening already within our physical environment. Next, please. That's me. Thank you. Okay, any questions?
Hey, Morris, thanks very much. So, you present some great ideas there, and I would think that perhaps as a sector, we were well down the road on some of that stuff, at least in our thinking. I'd like for you to reflect a little bit on what COVID-19 has done and those change in protocols. I noticed that people had to retool. People had to start looking for disposable containers in F&B and things, which almost went against where their head had been and brought to. Any thoughts on that impact and how we accelerate out of that?
Well, I suppose I run a environmental certification awards program when single-use plastics are one of the no-go areas, but we had to give everybody a pass because public health came first. But what I thought the positive I took from it was the frustration from restaurateurs in particular that they had to use these. But then behind it came a very strong compostable container approach. So it was a short-term issue, but linked with that is also what I really believe is really, really important is there's an effort to try and make everybody feel guilty about our personal and our business existence, that it's our fault. We are where we are because we're bad. We're not. We work with the tools we have. What is lacking, really is lacking, is government leadership. Think about single-use plastics. Overnight, and overnight means within 6 to 12 months. All we need is the EU to state there will be no single-use plastic beverage containers allowed to be sold within the EU. 12 months, finished. Move on, next one. That's leadership. And we, as businesses, as citizens, we need to understand we need to take radical action. We need to change what we're doing, but we also need leadership behind it. The frightener for me, I'll keep going back to it, is and I hope I'm wrong, but I cannot see the era of cheap flights that I can walk up to my airport and for €19 right now I could fly to Portugal. I mean, it's mad. So that's a threat. But regulation, strong decision making can be done. And and then go back to that single-use plastic. We've got 5-star hotels in Ireland that have no single-use plastic in customer-facing areas because they took decisions to change and to be different. So it is leadership, example, good case studies, but yes, it's important for individual businesses to take action, but we really need that strong support from our governments regionally. And it's not just even governments, it's, the Laurentic Forum is a multinational approach. And it's this kind of influence that's needed.
Excellent answer. And I think your message is a strong one. It is going to take leadership from all levels. And we all have a part to play in that. Thank you very much again, Morris. It was great for you to come and present, and I'm sure there's going to be some follow-up as we move out of the official proceedings today and do some of the follow-up and the presentations and so on and so forth. Now I'm going to ask Krista to give 2 other videos a spin to tempt us with some great visuals. Krista?
Enough waking up to more bad news. Enough not making new friends or making it to the gym. Enough talking to the walls. Enough with the endless video calls. When was the last time you felt goosebumps? Or had a real date with a person, in person? Enough missing out. It looks like you've had enough. It looks like you need Iceland.
The kids have been everywhere. Orlando, Spain, France, the Canary Islands, but I've never taken them on a proper Irish holiday. They think adventure is somewhere you go on a plane. That there's nothing exotic in Ireland. That magic happens in other countries. That you can't have a beach day in Ireland. It's time to show them that the best adventures start on our own doorstep in Donegal.
Fantastic imagery. Thanks very much, Krista, for executing that flawlessly. Now we're going to move to Margaret Story, who's a project officer with TIDE, or Atlantic Network. TIDE uses virtual reality and augmented reality in archaeology and submarine exploration fields to enrich visitor experiences and introduce an exciting new dimension to tourism and cultural heritage of the Atlantic regions in the UK, Ireland, Spain, France, and Portugal. This is a Donegal-based project officer. Margaret Story, take it away, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. So I'm actually representing Donegal County Council, and our project is amongst many other partners with Spain, with France, and a few other areas. I myself have worked in tourism for over 25 years, so I have a vast experience and platform of information. And what we're doing with this particular project is sustainable tourism. How are we going to move forward? So if we can go to the next slide. So what is TIDE? So TIDE, or another word for it, is Atlantic Network for Developing Historical Maritime Tourism. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring history back, and we're trying to develop a new tourism product, a sustainable product. So the plan is to aid organizations in the Atlantic region, the tourism development sector, in identification of potential niche tourism packages. So we're not only just developing a VR experience, but we're actually going to create toolkits for other people in the Atlantic, Interreg Atlantic area, to do something post this project. New slide. So what is the project? So the project is that we are going to explore historical maritime, and we're going to bring it into a VR experience, or for some of our partners, augmented reality, in archaeology and submarine exploration fields to enrich the visitor experience. So we're going to introduce an exciting new dimension to tourism and cultural heritage of the Atlantic regions that I'm partnering with. Next slide. So what is the project? So the whole idea is to look at 5 different eras: the Napoleonic era, the Spanish Armada, the World Wars, and the Atlantic migrations. Donegal and my colleagues that are involved in what we call the stakeholder group have chosen 2 eras, the Napoleonic era and the Spanish Armada. We also have partnered with Donegal and Devon, sorry, Derry and Devon, and the project is going to be based on World War I. Next slide. So the other objectives of the whole project is we've created a website, but we're creating a platform. So not only are we going to have 3 VR experiences in Donegal, we're also going to have a platform where we will have other historic maritime information on this platform. We will also link with our partners. So our partners in France and Spain and Devon and Portugal will also have historic experiences that linked with ours. So if there's somebody in Spain interested in the Spanish Armada and they click onto the platform, they will see that there's huge experience and history in Ireland in relation to the Spanish Armada also. We're creating a toolkit which is live, and I've put the link there. That's for anybody else post this project that would like to do a similar thing. Next slide. So Donegal, I've just given you a map of Ireland, and I've kind of pulled into Donegal to give people an idea. All our experiences are on the sea, on the coastline, and they are all located on the Wild Atlantic Way. So we've just given you an idea of the 5 sites that we have chosen throughout Donegal, and we will create trails. So they will come from Northern Ireland into Donegal, go around the coastline and down into Sligo and down into the country, and all of our experiences can be expanded. Next slide. So just to give you a bit of information on our sites that we've chosen, Fanad Lighthouse is quite northerly in Donegal and is quite historic, and I will give more information on that, but this is just give you a flavour of Fanad Lighthouse and the website address. Next slide. Fort Dunree is the second site, and it is actually the location where the SS Laurentic shipwreck, it's close to that location, and you'll see there at the centre there's a memorial for the Laurentic. Next slide. Our third site is Inishowen Maritime Museum, and again there would be a lot of historic examples and lots of memorabilia from the different eras in display in the museum. Next slide. Killybegs, again linked to the Spanish Armada, and I'll go into more detail on that in a few minutes, but very much linked to all of our themes. Next slide. And Burton Port, which is in the Gaeltacht region. Next slide. So the VR experiences, we have 2 VR experiences, and the VR experience in relation to the Napoleonic era is in relation to the shipwreck of the Saldanha, and we've themed it the Saldanha Gone But Not Forgotten. And there's a reason for this, because a lot of people don't realise that the reason why we have Fanad Lighthouse was because of this shipwreck. If we go to the next slide, please. So the Saldanha itself, she came from England. She was ordered in 1806. She was delivered in 1809. She was only 2 years old when she was shipwrecked, and she was shipwrecked off Loch Swilly, the Swilly Rocks on the Saldanha Head at Ballymastocker Bay, which is an absolutely glorious area, but quite strong with its seas when the storms are there. So we've got information gathered, such as all of the captains that would have sailed this ship. Next slide. So we've done a lot of research. We've researched her final journey, the crew that was on board, and the lead up to the actual shipwreck. Next slide. So, I mean, what she was doing was she was actually traveling with the sloop Talbot, and they were keeping an eye on the land, the seas going up and down. Unfortunately, in November, which we are in now, we have lots of gales and we have lots of winds and storms. And sadly, she met her fate. Next page. So what we've done is, with that information, we've researched what is true. There's lots of information that is fact, and there's quite a lot there that's fiction. So we've had to do a bit of research. But the mood that we want to portray in the VR experience is that it's a tragedy with a never-ending prosperity. So the experience itself in the VR unit is going to be 3.5 minutes. And the title is The Saldana Gone But Not Forgotten. Next slide. So this is an image of Lough Swilly and the map of the fortifications, which are all linked. The VR experience itself, we are kind of in the process of deciding what the experience will be. There is so much that we can hone in on, but we want to bring in the historical element into the VR experience, but we also want to make it interactive for all consumers. So we're aiming at children, we're aiming at adults, we're aiming at retired people. And we just want people to know about the VR experience, but also to have a bit of fun element to it. So, for example, there was a parrot that was found about 6 months later, and he was shot by a farmer, not knowing what it was. And it wasn't until he went to retrieve the parrot that he seen the captain's name on it. So there's lots of little elements that we can bring into it. There was a survivor in a shirt and a nightcap, and they believe that was the captain. He was given patching by locals to revive, but sadly he didn't come through. He passed. So next slide. So this is post the experience. This is post the shipwreck, where the burial of the captain is. There's a mass grave that's being researched at the moment, location-wise. And there's lots of kind of background in terms of how people lived in those times. Locals in abject poverty, and the patrolling itself, what was involved in it. Next slide. So again, since the shipwreck, there has been material that has been recycled. And most importantly, Fanad Lighthouse was recommended post the shipwreck. It was designed by George Halpin, who has designed many lighthouses. And this is something that we'd like to link. And this particular experience will be in both Fort Dunree and Fanad Lighthouse. So next slide. So the second VR experience in relation to the Spanish Armada, we are going to focus on two ships, the La Llorona and the La Trinidad Valenciana. So next slide. So again, we've gathered lots of information in terms of when the ship was built, what kind of background was there, the era and the kind of armament that was on them. If we go to the next one. Again, what kind of travels, how many people were on the Llorona, etc. So a particular area that we are focusing on with the Llorona is she actually went into Killybegs for repairs and for provisions. And there were many shipwrecks around Donegal, and quite a lot of men discovered that La Llorona was actually in Killybegs. So they went to Killybegs by foot, and the Llorona decided to offload quite a lot of her armor to lighten the boat and take on as many men as they could, which they did. They took on 1,300, but sadly she met her fate in Northern Ireland, in Antrim. And sadly, the majority didn't survive. So if we go to the next slide, the Trinidad, sorry, I'm tongue twisted today. Trinidad Valenciana, again, we've got the background. She's a sailing ship when she was built. Next slide. Both of them would have gone up around the UK. So we're getting links as to the travels that they had done together. And again, she shipwrecked off the Donegal coast. So if we go to the next slide, what is the VR experience going to be? Well, what we are going to show is a brief element to the final journey. And the mood that we want to portray is determination and fate. And it'll be a similar length in experience, 3.5 minutes. The description. So again, we're looking at where she traveled, why she traveled, who she traveled with, and how they met their fate. And the VR experience will be interactive, that the person can go through either experience or both if they wish. Next slide. So we've got quite a lot of artifacts in Derry City, Strabane, Tower Museum. These are some examples of the Trinidad Valenciera. There's a lot of information that is common and on display, similarly in Grange and Sligo. Next slide. So our third VR experience, the one that we're working with Derry and Devon, it's based on the World War I, and it's a kite balloon and convoy of ships. So you'll see there, it's kind of a cartoon picture. This is actually a picture from the VR experience itself. This VR experience is very well developed at this stage. And this is showing the convoy of ships heading out to sea. And the kite balloon itself would have been keeping an eye out of any mines, submarines in the sea, and would have had a type of phone that they would have phoned down if they seen something. So if we go to the next slide. This is giving you some of the imagery that we've done. A lot of research has gone into what they wore, what the ships looked like, what types of ships were used, how they were camouflaged, the functions of different ships. And this is something that we are trying to portray. So we're trying to show the historical element in the VR experience. So for example, they're going to use binoculars. There'll be just one circle as opposed to two. And that is what they would have seen in that era. So if we go to the next slide. And that's basically it. So this is one way of bringing our historical maritime into new technology, and will support, museums in a modern way, which is becoming quite popular. Thanks, folks.
Thanks very much, Margaret. And perhaps the question I have to ask you may have just answered, but Brooks is wondering if these VR experiences are part of an installation or on site, or is it something more ubiquitous, like through the internet, as long as you have a headset?
They will be on site. So the whole idea is to encourage people to go to the five sites. So we're trying to create a trail. We will have some of the experiences in each of the sites, and we will promote for you basically to carry on down the county or up the county, and then go into Northern Ireland or go in down south of Donegal. And the VR experience will have kind of a ship. There'll be a little area where you will sit or stand, and it's all work in progress as to what the experience will look like.
Very much in the early stage, yes. I actually did do a virtual mine tour at one point, and I was quite impressed with how well it could be done. It was a good experience for me. So Margaret, thank you very much for agreeing to come and talk to us today. I will remind people that there's still some pretty brisk conversation taking place in the chat window. I'm seeing some emails shared and some other conversations happening. We're getting to the point in the agenda where we start to wrap up, and I think we did ask about 2.5 hours of your time, and we may actually deliver on that. I think something we can be proud of, Maeve. Maeve, did you have any final thoughts before I conclude?
I suppose, well, you'll be thanking people anyway, but I guess this is kind of, it's a conference today, I suppose. It's kind of a chat, but it's very formal and that our speakers have said their piece, done their PowerPoint. It's not really a forum for a big conversation, and that's stuff we want to do in the meantime between now and the next conference. The conference is just a device to get us together, I think. And so just to keep the, if people want to follow stuff up with us, all of the panelists are available, particularly myself and Craig, our details are available on the website, and just to keep the chat going. And I think there's a lot of commonalities, without a doubt, between all the regions. It's very obvious. And I'm a big idea. What's this R&D we learned about copying stuff? Was it you that had that term, Craig? Was it you that, tell us what it is?
R&D is for rob and duplicate.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of robbing and duplicating, and if we could do that across these 4 regions, which have so much in common, it would be amazing. But anyway, back to you, Craig, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Maeve, and thank you very much for doing an excellent job as co-host. Since I've got involved in this, I've really enjoyed our collaboration together, so it was great that we could do this. Certainly thanks to Don McNeil, who brought us together in this forum for the 13th year. I'm not sure if Don is hearing me, but certainly his idea and his leadership has been valued. There's been a steering committee who has met throughout the year. Well, I got a feeling we got a special guest coming in here, do we? We've had a steering committee. Oh, there he is. Look. Oh, he's looking professorial over on the table. Hello, Don. It's great to see you. We've had a steering committee that helped us put things together. Moya, Connor, Andrea, Yanni, Elias, Stan, Juanita, Minerva, and Joan. Thank you for the many meetings we've had and the great learnings and sharings. Our presenters today, Sigrid, Morris, Johan, Margaret, and Dale. There were many sponsors who are part of today's event, but also the complete forum, which is going to be going on for the next couple of days. Check out the website. These people are very vested in the happenings here. A special thank you to Krista Sweetland and Juanita Ford for their technical skills and wizardry. On that note, we did record this today, so we'll figure out how to make this available going forward. But most importantly, thank you to the attendees for participating. We want to hear from you. We will be sending out a survey. We want some good feedback to see how we can do things a little better. We want to make sure that we're addressing issues that are important to you, because we do see some programming elements as the year progresses. As the minister said, and others have alluded to, we're all very much looking forward to a time when we can get back together, get back to a new normal, and hopefully the 14th may be that very opportunity. But in the meantime, I think this has been a tremendous venue for us to get together today. Zoom, we've all become very comfortable with this, and this was so much easier this year than it would have been in years past because of the experience that we've all shared collectively. So thank you to the participants. Please reach out. Please take a few moments to answer the survey, which you will find in the very near future in your inbox. Hearing from you is going to be imperative for us doing it a little better going forward. On that note, I want to thank you all for participating. Our numbers were very strong today. It's great to see representation from all the geographic areas. And again, as Maeve said, we're here to celebrate our similarities and learn from our differences. So that's the great opportunity that I see going forward. On that note, everyone, be well, stay safe, and we'll see you at the next one.